I'm Mr. Ramsey, saving Western civilization, one student at a time.
In this episode, we're going to discuss the Carolingian Dynasty under Pepin the Short, and then later his son Charlemagne, and then after that, Louis the Pious and his sons Charles the Bald, Louis the German, and Lothar. So if you remember, Pepin the Short was crowned king in 752 AD. Then, in roughly 754 AD, Pepin went to Rome because the Lombards, which is actually a Germanic tribe in the north portion of modern-day Italy, was giving Pope Stephen II, problems in the land, and so they were causing trouble. And so what Pepin the Short is actually forces the Lombards, which means long beards, but forced the Lombards to get away from the Pope, and then Pepin actually gives Pope Stephen a piece of land called the donation of Pepin, okay, which sets up the Papal States, which the Pope will rule all the way until the 1800s, okay? Because of this, the Pope starts to look to the Franks as the protector of Christendom, of Christianity, and the Pope in particular. They formerly actually were looking at the Byzantine Empire, but the Byzantine Empire was not helping, and that has a long history, which we don't have to go into. But you have now the protector of the papacy were the Franks. That's why people refer to the French as the eldest daughter of the eldest daughter of the church, not Europe. Eldest daughter of the church. Then in 768 AD, Pepin's son, Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, that's what Charlemagne means, became the Frankish king. And eventually he becomes one of the Europe's greatest monarchs because he revives learning. He basically doubles his empire. He brings back basically civilization. He has which we call a cultural revolution, a cultural revival of the classics, and he's going to run his empire, which will be known as the Holy Roman Empire, where his goal is to protect Christians within from enemies within, called heretics, and protect Christians from the dangers without, which are the people such as the Vikings, the Magyars, and the Moors. So the things that you need to know about Charlemagne is that he nearly doubles the borders of his kingdom, which includes Germany, France, northern Spain, and most of Italy. Okay? And the reason why that's important is because of the fact that this is the first time since the Roman Empire that area had been united under one kingdom. Okay? And that's called the Frankish Empire. And eventually it'll turn into the Holy Roman Empire, which we'll talk about in just a second. In addition, that's the first thing. The second thing he does is he revives learning. He invites a man from England, Aachen, who runs the palace school at a place called Aix-la-Chapelle, or Aachen, the German word, okay, and develops a program based on scripture and Latin and the classics, okay? And this school helps revive the learning to set in motion Western ideas, okay? In addition to that, Charlemagne develops, this is the third thing, develops a new concept of empire, which is the Holy Roman Empire. What happens in 800 AD, Leo III, who's the Pope at this time, is having problems with the Roman nobles. Okay? And usually the Pope would turn to the Byzantine Empire. But the Byzantine Empire and the Pope have had problems roughly from Justinian, which is roughly 520 onward. Okay? And so the Byzantine Empire would actually attack the papacy. So during this time, for roughly 200 years, the Pope was actually looking for another protector. And they find their protection under the Franks, and in particular under Charlemagne. Because in 800 AD, when the Pope was being attacked by the nobles of Rome, Pope Leo III calls Charlemagne, and Charlemagne comes to Rome and military defends the Pope. Okay? And for the Pope's gratitude for defending him on Christmas Day of 800 AD, he crowns Charlemagne as the Holy Roman Emperor. Okay? Because the reason why I call it the Roman Emperor is because he has united all of Western Europe like the Roman emperors of the past. In addition, it's called Holy because it's been blessed by the Pope. So, the goal of the Holy Roman Empire is to be the protector of the church, protector of Christianity, to protect it from heretics within and infidels without. That is the goal. It's the secular arm of the church. So that's what happens. Now, when Charlemagne was running his empire, he would set up basically a small central bureaucracy, which are known as counts. These counts actually assisted him in ruling his Holy Roman Empire. And each year, he would send royal messengers, which are called missi domices, to inspect and inform of the performance of these counts. So basically, you have Charlemagne, who's the emperor that would run the whole empire. He had counts that run local regions of the empire, and then every year he would send out these messengers, missi domices, to check to make sure that they were administering the empire well. Okay? So, that's how he governed the empire. Okay? There's a couple other things about Charlemagne that you might want to look into, like his battles and how unjust he was with the Saxons, but you can look at those later if you have time. But he dies roughly in 814 AD, and his son, Louis the Pious, is not the best king. He's the Holy Roman Emperor, and he's having problems governing the empire. And once Charlemagne dies and Louis the Pious starts to run the show, he also has 3 sons, and those 3 sons want to be the Holy Roman Emperor. And so you have a major fight between Charlemagne's grandsons, Charles the Bald, Louis the German, and a man named Lothar. Okay? And so it was basically turns into civil war. And eventually what happens is you have to split the empire into 3 parts. And that 3-part partition of the empire is known as the Treaty of Verdun. And it was signed in 843 AD, where Charles the Bald gets the western portion of the empire, which is modern-day France. Louis the German gets the eastern portion of the empire, which is present-day Germany. And Lothar gets a strip in the middle, and he gets the title Holy Roman Emperor. So the Franks now are divided into 3 empires, which are going to have major consequences later in Europe. That's all I have for today. See you next time.